morning of September 13th, 2024, began like any other day in Bradenton, Florida. For 24-year-old Laikyn Marie West, there was nothing to suggest that the next few hours would become the center of a criminal investigation that would capture attention across the state and leave investigators searching for answers that remain incomplete to this day. More than a year later, Laikyn has still not been found. And while an arrest has been made, the most important question remains unanswered. What exactly happened to Laikyn West? In missing persons cases, time is everything. The first few hours can determine whether someone is found safely or disappears forever. But sometimes a person vanishes so completely that investigators are left with only fragments of evidence, digital footprints, and a timeline that grows more disturbing the deeper they look. For Laikyn West, that timeline began on a September morning in 2024. By the end of the day, she would seemingly disappear without a trace. No confirmed sightings, no phone activity, no explanation. Only a mystery that would eventually evolve into a homicide investigation. Laikyn Marie West was 24 years old. She lived in Bradenton, Florida, and according to investigators, she maintained regular contact with friends and people close to her. In September 2024, she had plans for the future, including a scheduled flight that she was expected to take. Nothing suggested she intended to disappear voluntarily. Those details would later become important. Because when people who know someone well begin noticing unusual silence, investigators pay attention. And in Laikyn's case, that silence began on September 13th. According to investigators, Laikyn was last seen on September 13th, 2024. Authorities later determined that she left her residence after being picked up by someone driving a white vehicle. At the time, nothing appeared unusual. People leave home every day. Most return. Laikyn never did. As hours passed, communication stopped. Friends and family could not reach her. Days later, concern turned into alarm. When she failed to return home and missed a planned flight, her roommate reported her missing. A missing persons investigation was officially underway. At first, detectives faced a familiar challenge. They needed to determine whether Laikyn had left voluntarily, experienced an emergency, or become the victim of a crime. The answer would take months to uncover. Investigators started where modern detectives often begin, with technology, cell phone records, digital communications, location data. Those records helped detectives reconstruct portions of Laikyn's final known movements. According to law enforcement, one person quickly drew attention: a man named Ronald Chester Rocky. Investigators said records showed communication between Rocky and Laikyn on the day she disappeared. As detectives dug deeper, they learned the two knew each other and had arranged to meet. That discovery transformed the investigation. Detectives now had someone who may have been among the last people to see Laikyn alive. The question was whether he could help explain what happened next. As investigators conducted interviews, they worked to verify timelines and statements. According to court documents and law enforcement reports, Rocky acknowledged meeting Laikyn on the day she vanished. He reportedly told investigators that he later dropped her off and that she left his company alive. But detectives continued examining the evidence. They searched for witnesses. They reviewed available records. They attempted to confirm the timeline. As the months passed, investigators increasingly focused on inconsistencies they believed required further examination. The case was no longer being treated simply as a missing persons investigation. Something far more serious appeared to be unfolding. As detectives gathered additional evidence, the investigation entered a new phase. Authorities eventually executed search warrants and analyzed electronic devices connected to the case. What they reportedly discovered intensified their concerns. Investigators stated that digital evidence recovered during the investigation placed additional scrutiny on the circumstances surrounding Laikyn's disappearance. At the same time, detectives continued searching for physical evidence and attempting to determine where Laikyn had gone after September 13th. Yet one critical piece remained missing: Laikyn herself. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into more than a year. Despite extensive efforts, investigators were unable to locate her. No confirmed sightings emerged. No verified communication occurred. And according to authorities, there was no evidence suggesting she had voluntarily disappeared. As the case developed, multiple agencies became involved. Local law enforcement worked alongside state and federal partners. Detectives reviewed thousands of records, conducted interviews, and pursued every available lead. The investigation became increasingly complex. Every new piece of information had to be tested against the existing timeline. Every statement had to be verified. Every possibility had to be considered. Behind the scenes, investigators were attempting to answer a question that had haunted the case from the beginning. If Laikyn was no longer alive, where was she? Without a body, many homicide investigations become significantly more difficult. Physical evidence may be limited. Crime scenes may be uncertain. Timelines become harder to prove. Yet prosecutors can still pursue charges if enough evidence exists. And eventually, investigators believed they had reached that point. In February 2026, more than a year after Laikyn disappeared, authorities announced a major development. Ronald Chester Rocky was arrested and charged with second-degree murder in connection with the case. The announcement marked a significant moment in the investigation. For months, law enforcement had remained largely silent while gathering evidence. Now they were publicly stating that the missing persons case had become a murder case. Officials emphasized that the arrest did not mean the investigation was over. In fact, they said the search for answers would continue. Because despite the arrest, one devastating reality remained unchanged. Laikyn West had still not been found. Cases like this present unique challenges. Families often find themselves trapped between grief and uncertainty. Investigators may believe they know what happened. Prosecutors may believe they can prove it. But without recovering the victim, a painful absence remains. For Laikyn's loved ones, that absence is impossible to ignore. The place where she is remains unknown. The final moments of her life have not been fully reconstructed publicly. And some questions may not be answered until evidence yet to be discovered comes to light. Today, the case of Laikyn West stands at a difficult intersection. Part missing persons mystery, part homicide investigation, part search for justice. An arrest has been made. Charges have been filed. Court proceedings continue. But the story is not finished. Because somewhere behind the evidence, court documents, interviews, and investigative reports, is a young woman who vanished on an ordinary September day and never came home. Until Laikyn is found, one chapter of this case remains unwritten. And for those who loved her, the search for answers continues. As investigators move forward and the legal process unfolds, the hope remains that one day the final pieces of this mystery will be uncovered, and that Laikyn West's story will finally reach its conclusion.